do that. That's the easiest way to do it.
All right. Let's call this meeting to order. We do have a quorum. Let's see. I gotta find my spots.
Pledge allegiance.
First, let's stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's do that first.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I can't even see the flag.
Okay. I think you've seen the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Motion to
Second.
approve. Second.
John and James.
John and James.
James seconded it.
Okay. We need to have a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So, taken care of. After each case is presented, we will ask if anyone present would like to speak in favor of this case, and then I will ask if anyone is in opposition of this case, and you'll have 5 minutes and no more to speak. Mr. Clemens, our first case.
First and foremost, I want to apologize to all board members and agents and applicants for the mix-up on the agenda. That was completely my fault, and I will try to be better in the future, so.
Accidents happen, no problem.
With that being said, first case, DDR 2, 2024. It's the application of First Baptist Church with the agent of Marshall Duncan. Reason for the request is demolition of a portion of the existing structure that faces Madison Street. The existing education wing and chapel will be removed. The facade of the existing original sanctuary will be enclosed where the demolished portion of the building will be removed. The stone will be salvaged from the demolished portions and reused to provide the veneer for the patch portion for property located at 435 Madison Street. It is an aerial highlighted in blue on your screen. To be clear, the main sanctuary was built in 1917. That portion will remain, and they're proposing to demolish the what's known as the education wing that comes off of that sanctuary. As always, big thanks to Mr. David Smith for the photos you will see today. They do a great job in kind of showing the cases from a view that I couldn't get from street level. So thanks to Mr. Smith for that. This is the portion of the church. The 1917 portion, as I mentioned, is on the right-hand side, the more prominent feature. The education wing, which is proposed to be demolished, is on the left-hand side. Our 2020 survey has this to say about these structures. At the time of the 1981 survey, no construction was given, but a comment was included that the Roman facade was added in 1934. The congregation derived from an 1808 group, one of the earliest in the county. The first church at this location was begun in 1867, but not completed until 1891. That building was raised in 1916, and the current one completed in 1917. Education building and chapel were built in 1967. The next year, the church acquired the American Snuff Company warehouse property behind their parcel and eventually raised that building for an activities building. A third story was added to the activities building in 1980, and an elevated walkway was built to connect it to the church sanctuary. Other additions were made in 1985. The church is a two-story limestone neoclassical church building from 1917 with a flat roof and concrete foundation. The church is part of a sprawling complex of rear and side wings and additions. The original church is foremost when viewed from the street. The church facade on the south is symmetrical with 5 bays divided by massive Tuscan columns, full-height Tuscan columns, and a plain entablature. The frieze has the inscription, "My house shall be called a house of prayer." Above the cornice, the roof line has a parapet. The middle 3 bays of the facade have double anodized metal and glass doors with fixed transoms on the first floor. The outer 2 bays have paired single-light windows. There are similar windows in each bay of the second floor. The classical facade is flanked by recessed two-story bays with an entrance with double doors with tracery vertical lights. The east and west elevations have three bays separated by stone pilasters. Each bay has three-part vertical tracery windows. The north end of the east elevation is recessed and has a one-story gabled pediment with Tuscan columns over an entrance of double anodized metal and glass doors. Next to the entrance are 4 pairs of vertical tracery windows on the first and 5 pairs on the upper floor. The north end of the west elevation has a hyphen to a large recessed side addition from circa 1990. This 3-story wing has an exterior of smooth concrete, a flat roof, a concrete foundation, and 8 bays with a fixed single light window on each floor. At the west end of the wing, there is a projecting bay with a classical facade with 3 bays divided by Tuscan pilasters. It goes on in our in the final survey report, it goes on to say this about the additions. Due to these extensive late 20th century additions, the church does not appear to be eligible for National Register listing. And then just a zoomed out view, again, where you could see the education building to the left, which is proposed for demolition. Shot from the back, there's the one portion right here where the education building is attached. The rest of the main 1917 sanctuary would not be touched. And then an overhead, again, showing where this new wing comes into the main building there. This is the site plan that was submitted. Obviously, the 1917 building will remain. If demolition is approved today, the plan is to have 18 parking spaces and then another 9 spaces off of the drive aisle there. They are showing screening for those parking lots as well. And the west elevation, which is the only one that will be affected, right in the middle here is where the education building currently comes in. As I mentioned in the beginning, the stone will be salvaged from the demolished portions and reused to provide veneer for the patch portion there. Staff comments: if demolition is allowed, it would allow the portion built in 1917 to be more prominently featured and possibly make it eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. And second comment, ideally, instead of surface parking replacing the demolished portion, something would be built back in its place. And I will answer any questions of the staff if there are any. Yes, sir.
What day did you say that those were built? Not the church. Church is 1917 or
Yeah,
whatever. you said.
1967.
For both of those additions.
For the addition, the education wing.
Right.
Section 1954.
Was the chapel part of that addition?
Not sure. I'll defer.
Later additions.
It's later.
Okay.
So it's after the education wing.
Correct.
Yes. Any other questions?
I do, but they'd be for the
Yes.
other people. I
After,
think.
or if this gets approved and they do away with those structures, are they gonna try to get it on the historic register?
The representatives from the church are here and
Okay.
applicant agent, I would defer to them.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And this would probably be more for the applicants and stuff like that. One of the things that I regret was the building next to CDE over here on Madison
Yep.
Street when we tore that other one down. In my opinion, I wish I would have asked for a historical marker to be made and put up there. So I'm gonna ask you guys if there's a possibility, if this is allowed, contingent on that some kind of historical marker be put up in front up there by the roadside, maybe possibly talking about the educational part and maybe even the church as well. That would be nice to have a little historical thing up there on the road for people.
Okay. All right. Okay, if there's anyone who'd like to speak in favor of this case, come forward to the microphone, state your name and your address.
Good afternoon. I'm Marshall Duncan with Alcock Martin Architects. So I'm just going to speak on the design part of it, and he did a great job already kind of explaining, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I will say one thing that, in addition to what he talked about, is you can see on the building, the exterior elevation there, the grade drops down from Madison Street. And currently there's areaways that take you in down below. We're going to maintain that change in grade from Madison as you go back, so that the future parking will be lower than the Madison Street level. So the cars may not be completely hidden, but they're going to be lower than Madison Street, and there'll be some form of retaining wall that separates the front lawn from what's down in the back. So we're not putting parking on the same grade as Madison Street now currently. It'll be a little bit lower. And that's to accommodate, you can see there's an entry door in the shaded area where we're replacing the stone. That will be an entry area into their current lower level basement area. Yeah, right there, which will be their future office space. They're going to move all their admin suite into there. So this parking accommodates the handicap portion of servicing that new future office space that would be accessed by the door he pointed to a second ago. So I think the grade change there is important for y'all to know that we're not putting parking at the same level as Madison Street, where you drive down Madison, you'll see cars at that same level. They're going to be lower because A, that's what grade does, and B, it's the right thing to do. That current shaded area, we've done some investigation. It has limestone, the current stone's there behind it, but it's covered in like 2 inches of stucco that they applied when they did the addition. We're going to have to take the stucco off, but I'm pretty sure once we take that off, that existing stone won't be in any shape for exterior use. So we're going to, again, probably have to pull it off delicately and replace it with salvage stone from the current education wing. But every intent is to make it look like you see, and the hope is once it's all done, you won't know that anything was there before. If you're just looking at that side of the building, it will look like it was originally, actually. So the windows will match the other windows in style and size. And so the goal is, again, like I said, to be exactly like it may have been in 1917 once it was finished, just with the other building removed. So that's my comments on the design of it. I can't speak to things with the congregation. There's people here that can speak to that as far as their motivations, the reasons why they got to this point. But as far as the way to look, I can answer questions about that.
Any questions from the board?
Yes, sir.
Would you be opposed to putting up a historical sign there if this is approved?
No?
Okay, thank you.
No.
Marshall, got one quick question on the landscaping out there. You got a couple of grand 50 to 100-year-old trees out front. Doesn't look like that's in the area of disturbance. Those are not going to be touched out front.
No, they would not be, and we could protect those during the demolition.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see why we would, as long as they're careful in their demolition, those trees should be able to stay right where they
'Cause
are. And they would be out in front of where the retaining wall is. The retaining wall would basically be right where the face of the education wing is.
That was my next question. The parking lot area, it pretty much is the footprint of the larger building. that you're taking
Absolutely. And so it's hard to see, but in that little niche between the buildings, there's steps that go down. And so that would be the face of the education wing. The back of the chapel addition would be about where that retaining wall is, and you'd be down below
Okay.
that.
Thanks.
So the green space is still gonna be up next to Madison Street?
That's correct.
Okay.
The lawn, as you see it, should pretty much stay intact. The parking would be where the footprints of the buildings are.
It'll grow by the size of the chapel being torn down, because the parking will be all beyond that.
Yeah,
It'll actually get bigger.
yeah. And so it worked out nicely with the way the building sets down in there to be able to get the parking lower.
Yeah, staff has had at least 2 meetings with the church, if not 3, I think, in the last couple months, and we asked them to just provide a little more landscaping so that even though the parking is below, it's just a little more obscured from the roadway, and I think they've accomplished that in their site plan.
Okay.
All right.
Is that it? All right. Anyone else from the church want to speak?
Sorry, I blurted out something a while ago, I don't know, probably not.
That's okay.
I'm Mark Briggs, and I'm the chairman of the ad hoc building committee that's bringing this to you. And Pat Sawyer's here he's also on the committee, and there's several others. Just to want to give you a little bit of kind of how we got here, because this is important, in terms of why we decided to do what we're doing. This building that it was actually built in 1954, the educational part, and then the chapel was built in 1967. So it has been in disuse, unused for around 10 years now. We haven't been using it. The last use was for room in the inn, which was discontinued with the COVID. And the upper floors haven't been used in 6 or 7 years. And then the entire building actually hasn't had heat and cooling for a while. And the chapel hasn't been used nearly 10 years. The last use of it were some youth buildings there. So in 2000, when we built the new sanctuary, which you can see in the back there, the steeple, we moved virtually everything that met in this building to that building in 2000, the education, the worship, everything. And then the only building that's been in continuous use is the 1917 building, which has been continuously used as worship every Sunday, it's been used for classrooms. I actually had my Sunday school classroom in there for a few years. Then it was used for Hispanics, been used for Hispanic worship, continues to be used for that today. And it is planned to continue to be used for other worship activities on Sunday morning. And it has been in continuous use. So when we moved over there, we kept everything like it was for a year or two. And then everybody, all of our staff wanted to be in the new building, so we began moving staff into the new building during the weekdays over 5 or 6 or 7 years. And so now all of our staff works out of the larger building in the back, and there's no other staff room. For a while, that top floor of the education building we used for other parachurch type groups like FCA and Young Life and those kinds of things. But it became too expensive just to have those small groups in there to support the maintenance and the utilities and everything else. So about 10 years ago, we started having committees to work on this, to figure out what we could do on the building. Here, some of the ideas were a church school, and we actually talked to all the church schools in Clarksville to see if they were interested in doing it. And none of them were except for one, and the particular one that was interested was not a church school, it was a private school, and we couldn't get them to agree on theological matters. And so that kind of went out the wayside. Then we talked about converting them into missionary apartments, which was probably the most promising thing that we looked at. And then we also looked at a couple of others. Do you remember what it was, Bryce, the other couple of things that we were talking to about doing? Do you remember? Missionary dormitories and so forth. And so we began some work on that, on those projects, and we looked at the cost of doing it. The building has asbestos in it. It has utilities that are not functional, and it's actually just out of date. The room sizes are too small and so forth. And so the cost to rehab the building would be about 1.5 to 1.7 times the new construction, right, in that range. Well over $10 million to do that. So about 2 years ago, that variety of the committee came together and started working on what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, the biggest need of the church today is because we have a staff of around 50 to 60 people, is to get those folks together. So we looked at putting offices there, and we came up with a plan of putting offices in the lower floor of the 1917 building. It's about 10,000 square feet. So that will hold all of our offices in that particular place. And the only other thing we could come up with was to tear this building down because of the cost associated with the rehab. The chapel, unfortunately, is going along with it, and the reason for that is, as a freestanding building, it would need restrooms that meet ADA and many other things that would do it, and it would cost well in excess of its reconstruction cost to rehab it for use today. So that's kind of how we got here. Now, we began this process, this latest process, about a year and a half ago, and we came to a church vote on it. By the way, I'm representing the congregation. That's how it works in a Baptist church. They have to vote for everything we do. And so the way we went over it for about 3 or 4 months last summer and told everybody what the plans were. And believe it or not, the Baptists agreed 96% to do this plan back last fall. If you can find Baptists that'll agree 96% on things, you know it's got to be at least directionally correct. So that's kind of how we got to where we got to, and so now we're in the process of going through the planning and the process of accommodating this. We have through either funds on hand or with the sale of a piece of property that we're contemplating, we have enough funds to do the work right now, to do the work. So as soon as we can get the architectural design done, we get the approvals that we need, and we go through the process, we'll start on the deconstruction of that building, and it'll likely take place over about 90 days, plus or minus. And then we'll redo the outside, so that the outside will be intact while we're building. Probably take a year to a year and a half to build out the offices underneath the sanctuary to get them to modern day standards the way we want to do them. So that's what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Okay. Does anyone on the board have any questions?
Since you said that you had asbestos in there, are you gonna do some sort of reclamation? to
Yes.
Get that out of there first?
Yeah, we'll have to do, how do we do that, Bryce? Do we do?
We'll have to have that remediated before.
Yeah, remediated, we'll have to
That's
have
all I
that
wanted to
come,
be
that's
sure.
part of the process, yes.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yes.
The chapel's that front building, correct?
Yes, sir, on the left.
And that was built after the educational building?
67.
60, okay,
Yes,
that's where I
sir.
got 60.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And are you opposed to putting, if this is approved, are you good with putting up a historical sign?
I would have no opposition whatsoever, but you have to understand, I have to go back and those folks have to vote for it. So, so I will advocate for it. Let's put it that way.
I'm gonna put it as a contingent in the.
Okay,
in
all
the
right, all right.
commission, so.
That would work, yeah.
And Mr. Gannon, just to be clear there, I'm not sure this will get one of those state of Tennessee silver signs, but we definitely can, plenty of
Put some
examples
sort
of
of
local
historical mark.
signs.
Right, we
that
can
are
start
out
there, and then if they get approved on the historical, then it can become a silver sign. If
Yeah.
And
that's-
I think that's a great question for
Yeah,
them as
we
well.
could do that,
Would
yeah.
they be, one of the questions that came up earlier was, you know, you have a very historic structure on the right side there, and you're in a position, and Brent referred to it as the hyphen, the passageway between the older and the newer
Yes, sir.
structure. And even though something built in the 50s and 60s could be on the verge now, be considered historic, and it's up to the board today to determine that. That standalone church, though, built in 1917, could be eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. Not
Once, yeah,
necessarily our
once-
local historic zone, but would you all be against putting that building itself on the Register of Historic Places? It's really just a designation that says this is a piece of
I
history.
can't personally think of a reason that we wouldn't do that. That would be, again, one of those things that would have to go through past muster in terms of doing it. I can't think of a downside, because the building likely will never be, never have anything done with it. Certainly not while this generation is here. So if it is, it's after all of us are gonna be gone before anything ever gets done with it. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not gonna tear down a 1917 building.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay. Is there anyone else that wants to speak in favor?
Bryce? Yeah, come on up.
Bryce Powers, also represent the church. I was on that previous committee that was alive for about 8 years, trying to evaluate all these options. And really, the only thing I want to add is it was about a $12 million renovation that we estimated to rehab that building for any of those uses we talked about. And we kind of came to the conclusion, as Mark said, of the congregation, that was not the best use of the resources of the church. And to speak to Mr. Gann, we talked about as we salvage some of that stone during the demolition process, if this is approved. Pastor also had a vision for maybe like a seat wall and a gathering area in that green space, and I think that'd be a great place to add a sign of if we can't have the full-blown silver sign.
Right.
But I think there's some, we are intending to acknowledge history, and we talked as much as taking some of the stained glass out of the chapel, finding a way to accent that there too. So the church is very mindful of trying to remember the history, not just to obliterate it. So, and I'm happy to answer any other questions on the construction side if you have any.
You answered mine.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there anyone opposed that would like to speak? Okay. Again, any of you have any questions for anyone?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve with the contingent or be amended that with the approval of the demolition that a historical site, a historical sign be put up in that area to reflect what's being torn down, as well as maybe the church. May not be the official historical sign because we're not there yet. I know you're gonna apply for it, and hopefully it'll turn into that, but at least it'll be a marker that will start that process, hopefully.
Second.
All right, we've had a motion and a second, or is there any discussion?
Do we have to vote on the, as amended first?
You made a motion with the amendment. I think it'd be acceptable for the
Okay.
board to consider that.
Okay, just check.
Okay. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Okay, passes. Are there any public comments on any, or is that later?
I think we
Got
got
one
one.
more
Oh, that's
case.
right, we got one more, sorry.
One more case, DDR 3 2024. It's an application of JCM Management with the agent of Bradley Martin. Reason for the request is a new building design for a distillery and small assembly, which would be tasting and tour venue, for property located at 119 College Street. It is the grass lot highlighted on your screen. It is the lot that is in between Legends Bank and the old Forterra or Maynard's on Spring as it is now. It is this lot. The building will sit about 30 foot off of the Legends Bank property line there. Try to, with the renderings, add an inset map with kind of an arrow of how you was viewing the project, so hopefully that helped. That was more for me than y'all. But this is the angle as you would view the project from College Street. Main material is an aluminum rain screen wall cladding in a light cherry, which is very, very similar to the Shelby's Trio, as you will notice the building is as well, which is right up the hill with the same owner and same architect. And the material on the back half, which you can see better in a minute, is an architectural metal wall cladding, which is a burnished slate color. One more from the College Street frontage, more from the, I guess where the F&M ATM is now, or was, more toward the arena view. Again, the same materials from this side. It will have an outdoor seating area at front off of College Street. This view has North Spring Street in the foreground and College Street to the right. You do see the Trio up at the top of the picture there. And then this is the angle as you would view it from really the Riverside College Street intersection. A reminder though, this building will sit quite a ways back from North Spring Street, be a lot closer to College. Materials are the same. This is the architectural metal cladding, which will be on the back half, which will be mainly a distillery and I think for storage. The front half will be for tasting and tours and venue and things of that nature. Another shot, looking at it from a different angle. This is how you would view the project would be viewed from Maynard's on Spring or Forterra. This is the back half where the loading, and the site plan will show that in a minute, driveway access for loading, unloading, and again where the main distilling and storage will be held. Another view walking around the side of it here. Arrow in the bottom corner, again showing the side it will be viewed from. Again, we're still on the back half, which will be the distilling and storage portion of the building. And then the final half will be as it will be viewed from the Legends Bank parking lot. final shot, of course, looking straight down on the site, College Street at the bottom of the screen, North Spring Street on the left. And there is the building and site review. A couple things to point out here. First, there's 16 parking spots shown. CBD requires no parking. They are showing on this site plan an entrance on the far western side and an entrance and an exit on the other side here. Those are up for, they have to go before the Access Appeals Board. That board was supposed to meet last Friday. It did not meet, so the site plan, which will be heard tomorrow, is being deferred. Assuming that those go through and the site is not altered too much, it shouldn't have to come back before you today, but potential those accesses could be denied, and we could potentially be back here next month. But just wanted to let that be known. Also, we have an updated site plan showing the sidewalk, which stops about here. It now goes around the whole site, which will connect that whole block face, will be connected by sidewalk. The materials that were mentioned, the only other main materials, the standing seam metal roof. We'll have some brick veneer around the columns. In staff comments, a new construction building design shall reflect the period of its construction and shall not attempt a reproduction of a historic style. Site plan approval by the Planning Commission, as I mentioned, that will be deferred tomorrow, so that will be final at the end of March. And then landscape plan approval will still be needed as well. And I will answer any questions of the staff if there are any.
Did you say there were 16 parking places?
16, that's correct. And they do have a shared access with Maynard's on Spring, which will have additional parking down here, and hopefully soon, the new parking deck, is that garage? The new parking garage will be right across the street. So.
Okay.
And to be clear, none is required with CBD zoning, so.
Yeah, that was my original question when we were talking small assembly space, and I counted 16 parking spots, but then you answered it in your presentation.
Yeah.
So.
And I will say that the way the site lays, should it become a popular thing, I think they could come back and add more parking to the site. Obviously, it's very green, it's fairly flat, so they have some opportunities there if they need more in the future.
They want to add more parking. County make more money.
Any other questions?
Okay. No questions? All right. Is there anyone here to speak for this?
Damn it, Brad, be quick.
My name is Brad Martin, Lyle Cook Martin Architects. So I don't want to bore you with a bunch of verbiage, but I have show and tell. These are the basic real materials, and you don't have to pull it apart or anything, but that just gives you a feel for the palette of what we're cladding the building with. There's several design concepts behind the design of this. Let's start at the front of the building. The owner of the building, Mr. Maynard, owns Shelby's Trio, and he wanted the front glass entry piece with the single slope roof to be very reminiscent of Joe's Garage. He wanted that kind of concept, that branding concept to continue. Once you get past that point, then you've got a single story rectangular space that would be, I think we referenced it as a small assembly hall. Catering can happen there, events, they will do tours of the distillery and show people how products are made and so forth. The back part of the building, the gabled form, is sort of a modern interpretation of a barrel aging warehouse that you might see in mid-Kentucky. So we've got three distinct parts to this thing, and not trying to copy a barn, but that's what we're doing. We're doing a modern twist to a barn. So that kind of tells you what we're doing. On top of the roof, we've got a rooftop screen that will hide mechanical units. We don't want to see any of that stuff. So we've thought pretty hard about those type things. The materials that are passing around that that the aluminum panel is a simulated wood siding. It's actually a rain screen material. That's exactly what is used on Shelby. So there'll be this connection, a visual connection with what's going on up the hill. The bottom of the building, I didn't have a sample, but that's poured concrete, and it'll have like a horizontal banded, impregnated pattern to it. So that's pretty much it. Be glad to answer any questions anybody has.
All right, any questions? No? Okay.
Ma'am? I have
Yeah.
a question. Mr. Martin, I got probably 8 or 10 phone calls about this project because 2 weeks ago it was put out on Facebook
I saw that.
that it was ready to go. And that puts me in a bad position because I don't want to talk about it because I don't know anything about it.
Sure.
And, you know, and we've run into this before, probably about 9 months ago, the same thing happened. And I understand it, we're, you know, you want to promote you know, the venue, but, and I understand, you know, news media will come in and say, well, but I think we've got to have a little bit of control over what gets out there because that puts the board in a bad position because if everybody's stirring up about the distillery and we sit here and go, well, no, and, well, you know, it was approved, it's already been, it's already going, so, and I just, that's, you know, I just want to bring that up.
Completely. I didn't do that.
No, I know, I'm just, you know,
They asked me for drawing. Well, the owner had the drawings.
no,
you know.
I understand.
Mr. Smith, I can answer that, and I will have a talk with Mr. Chris Smith of Clarksville Now. This does happen probably 2 times a year at least.
Yeah.
Projects get some legs. I think Bucky's was definitely another example of stuff that seemed like it was done prior to, and it does make both the planning commission and this board can kind of paint this in a bad light of, well, it's a done deal. Why even bother? Well, no, it's not. When this goes public, they can get these pictures off the internet and off us and off other sources, and they run with a story. And we've had them do corrections in the past that say, well, it's not approved yet. And they do have a new reporter there for Clarksville Now covering development side of things. So I will talk to Mr. Smith and the new Christopher Brown, I think is his name, or Christian Brown, and just talk to them in the future about, guys, just pump the brakes for about 2 weeks. Let us get through the approval process, and then you'll have a full story. So I understand.
Yes, sir.
Somebody asked, I think Ms. Williams asked, 16 parking spaces.
I didn't do that either.
Oh, but what I'm saying is, and I think Mr. Gannon said because of the garage that's gonna, what's the time frame of this building from start to finish, approximately?
We haven't had explicit conversations about that yet. It's still going through the site approval, and we're not finished with drawings yet, so it won't start immediately. That's a good concern.
I mean, 9 months, year? Just a guesstimate?
Year plus.
Construction at least a year, I would think.
You
And
can't
then
do anything
a couple
less
more
than a
months
year.
of approval, so you're talking probably 12 to 18 on a good schedule.
So the garage may not even, because the garage hadn't been approved yet, has it? Point I'm trying to get is, if we get this building built and the garage isn't built, where are people gonna park?
So, two thoughts about that, and Brent might have an update on the garage. I think we've seen some things recently. They've redesigned it slightly, but I think they are in a better position to get moving on that here soon, right?
Yeah.
And that's gonna be prefab construction, so that should be a relatively
Yeah, it's gonna go
3 to
quick.
6 month process to build that. I look at parking like, if you got a venue and it's popular and you don't have parking, that's your own fault. You know, if you don't want to park it and you all of a sudden have someone there and they're parking everywhere else, if they're in the street, they're going to get tickets.
Get towed and ticketed.
To be fair with this thing, though, the gentleman who's building this does own the lot next door with over 70 parking spaces. And, you know, if they wanted to share the space between them, I think they're more than welcome to do that. He also owns a parking deck up the street of another 30 or so spaces as well. So there's parking nearby, but it may not be exactly on this site.
Good question.
Well, and we don't have jurisdiction over the parking.
Right.
I mean, you know, if it's CBD, it's a zoning issue, not a
If I made every
design
use
issue.
downtown have the same amount of parking that they do on Wilma Rudolph, we might as well not have a downtown.
Right. Okay. Anyone else? Comments?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Is anyone
Motion to
ready to
approve.
make a motion?
Second.
Okay.
Doug made
Motion to
motion.
Doug,
approve.
motion, John, second. All right. Any more comments, questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passed. All right, next.
All right. I'll take over this portion of the meeting. Every year, we have to have an election of officers for the next year. Those members can only come from the Regional Historic Zoning Commission, so that means Mr. Doug, James, Marcia, John, and Gail. You do have also Wanda Smith, who's not here, and the unfulfilled seat. The Planning Commission will vote next, or tomorrow, to nominate a member to be on the Regional Historic Zoning Commission since Tom Spigner, his term was over at the Planning Commission. So we'll get you a new member next month from the Planning Commission. That said, we need a nomination from the floor from one of those 6 individuals I just mentioned to be the chairman, and then we'll do a vice chair as well. To go over the duties a little bit, the chairman just really runs the meeting, unlike the Planning Commission, where he's a little more involved with being the chairman. You are the voice of the meeting. The vice chair fills in when the chair is not available. And from time to time, if something does come up, maybe with a legal framework at the city, we may have to just invite the chairman or the vice chair to come to a meeting for a little bit or talk on the phone if should something come up with lawsuit or other things that are going on with the city. So, and then they provide guidance and can add things to the agenda. So that's pretty much the role of the chairman. And I guess at this time, I'll take any nominations from the floor for chairman.
I nominate John Gannon.
Okay.
One second.
Second, all right. Any other nominations? All right, we'll close nominations. All those in favor of John Gannon serving as the chairman for the 2024 Common Design Review season, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Congratulations, John.
Thank you, sir.
All right, at this time, I'll also take nominations for a vice chairman for the 2024 year.
I'll nominate Gail.
All right, get a second?
Second.
Second. Any other nominations? All those in favor of Gail being the vice chair for 2024, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, Gail.
All right. Public comment time. Has anyone got anything they need to bring up? No? Okay. Then
Motion
we'll-
to adjourn?
Second.
Meeting is adjourned.